Yeah, well, he's convinced by that.
It'll be a long
Yeah.
day.
Yeah, there's a lot of things on the agenda.
The one I'm most likely to speak to is the very last one. Because I've said everything I'm gonna say about this. It is what it is.
Yeah. Right.
I do wonder if there'll be another street four-way as part of the traffic parking project. Goes to that. They want on street parking. People to park on the street. So does that mean all the people? So if you start with like Harrison one way, Bernie, and going through Canadian, does that mean that during the renovation? I do.
Oh, I don't have my,
This whole project is a big compliment.
we don't have my
Nobody's gonna
special
be completely happy,
microphone.
which means, okay, you know, you must have a good process.
No, none of them. No, it's all right.
I'll
Just,
keep you. Oh, there you go.
I'll leave it on. I just won't mumble.
All I wanted,
I'm getting close enough. I can get you.
really care what I wanted, so it was more of, I want to make sure that.
All right. This would be the pre-call to order, so
You want it to work in this 50 years.
the conversations probably should stop.
We have a lot of other, we're gonna be busy because we have a lot of work. We're gonna be a busy committee with projects. Just gonna keep it centralized.
So this is your first committee meeting?
We live up at,
Change chairs.
They wasn't.
Just to irritate you. No, it wouldn't.
Keep you on schedule.
I know.
Do what you might.
Yeah, well, somebody,
yeah, I don't.
I can't, I don't see the color right. Is it on or off?
That's on. You have a live mic.
Hot mic. Oh,
There you go.
my accommodation. Thank you. I don't know why they all do. Probably every handicapped person looking for a space, I don't know why they're all handicapped spaces.
We're gonna be talking about that.
Set a time. If you want tomorrow morning.
One light on or off? It takes two lights to be on.
Hey, you know, I know a woman who got hired.
At some point, somebody's gonna come running in.
Yeah, Rebecca will come in. Elizabeth, is one light on? Two lights means, oh, I'm on.
Showtime.
Good evening. Good evening means please sit down and be quiet. Thank you, Mr. Constituent. Good evening. The hour is 6 p.m. having arrived. Don't let me interrupt you. I will call to order this regular meeting of the Municipal Services, Facilities, and Infrastructure Committee. Meeting is being broadcast live on the City of Keene YouTube channel and channel 1302. Video is also streamed on the city's website and is posted on the website by the end of the next business day, barring any technical difficulties. Copies of the agenda are available in the wall pockets just as you enter the room. The public will be recognized to ask questions, make comments on the agenda item under discussion. Once recognized, all remarks are to be made through the chair. I will not recognize an individual a second time until everyone else has had a chance to speak. Anyone who wishes to address the committee is asked to go to one of the microphones in the room, identify yourself by name and address prior to speaking. Minute taker is with us remotely this evening. Committee members, remember to turn on your microphone and remind me. If the minute taker is unable to hear, they will ask you to speak louder or to turn your mic on. Now call the meeting to order. I note for the minute taker, all 5 of us are in our place and present. Full committee agenda is here. And regarding the committee agenda, I would point out that we have a pretty full agenda this evening. It's not that we can't handle it, however, we have a lot of items to discuss. So I'm going to ask all of the different presentations and consultants that will be coming forward to maintain their comments to 15, 20 minutes maybe. Members of the public that are addressing us, please try to be brief and not repetitious. I think that we'll get the point the first time, pretty likely. But just to try to focus it, we do have a major event coming up later in the agenda, and that is dealing with the downtown infrastructure project. And I don't want to be doing that too late when we're getting a little fuzzy. So, first item on the agenda is regarding a communication from the Elm City Rotary, Keene Rotary, Nanoc Interfaith Project requesting permission to erect a peace pole in Central Square. Who is going to address this first? Would it be Carl Jacobs, illustrious former city councilor? Good evening.
Carl Jacobs, I live at 81 Wyman Road in Keene. We are, the groups that you mentioned, interested in having some sort of public monument dedicated to peace in Central Square. We've had conversations with a number of people, as you can see, by the groups that are supporting it, and I think they'll briefly tell you about their support for it. We understand that the process to get something put on Central Square is the public art process, so we have tried to put our proposal in terms of the format of the public art process. So we picked a particular location, which is on Central Square in our proposal. But the way the process works, there is also a consultation with city staff, and in this case it was Andy Bohannon who worked with us. And there may be some other options, which I would prefer to let Andy speak to that, other than I will say that our main focus is that we would like to have a peace monument on Central Square. And we understand also that there are, well, and tonight you're going to be talking about some of the things, so this may have to be folded into some longer projects, but we think it can be. So in the interest of brevity, I think you all have the proposal, or hope you do, and maybe Andy wants to comment, or I don't know what your process is here.
Well, I may probably come back to you, but I'm going to recognize Andy Bohannon, our Deputy City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Mr. Jacobs, for bringing this forward. So when we met, given the timeline of the current construction in downtown revitalization project and looking at Central Square and knowing that was part of the agenda and the scope, and not wanting to necessarily put something in that scope right away and trying to kind of figure everything out, we took a look and said, there was a little bit of discussion related to the fountain, and is there a possibility of kind of mixing these two proposals together and working through public art to create some type of peace fountain possibly. So they were open to that idea and working with some artists and continuing that conversation. So we wanted to bring it back to you to say, this is kind of the direction that we are headed, and hopefully that is a direction that the committee would accept, and we could move forward for that.
Oh, thank you. Being part of the design process of the downtown, one of the points that came up was that the pile of rocks that we have out there right now for a fountain really could be improved upon in terms of the artistic value as well as historical value. And then it came forth with this idea for the peace pole. And I thought, wow, this is a great combination of solving two issues that it's great. We'd really like to get something a little more historic looking, as well as representation of the peace issue that you and your group has brought forward. So I think very likely this could turn out to be a great solution. It's going to be one of these things of designing art, which will be a process, but at least we have time for this. It's not urgent as such. So, Director, or City Manager, Assistant City Deputy.
I forgot my badge from earlier.
Andy, did you have
Little
anything else
deputy.
to add? Otherwise, I'll go back to Carl and.
No, I do not. You summarized very well. Thank
Okay.
you.
You want to add anything, or just let your committee come forth and?
The only thing I'll make clear is that whatever ultimately is put there, our interest is in the peace monument part of it.
Yes.
If there is some renovation to a fountain that needs to be done or something like that, we didn't come in prepared to address that, and we, we would understand that somebody else, the city maybe, would take that on. But I realize this is maybe getting the cart before, we have to have a little more discussion to find out what we're really talking about. But our focus is on the peace monument, not necessarily on renovating the fountain or removing it or whatever.
I understand.
Yeah.
Understood. Would you want to bring forth any of your committee?
I think
or-
several people would like to speak, yes.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone.
Good evening.
My name is Tom Julius. I chair the Monadnock Interfaith Project, and I live at 3 Tannery Road in Gilsum. It's an honor to be here today with this team of civic leaders and in support of placing a peace monument on Central Square. The Interfaith Project, some of you, I think, are familiar with. The Interfaith Project has Christians, Jews, Buddhists, Muslims, Hindu, Baha'i, and wholehearted individuals unaffiliated with a particular spiritual tradition, all with the common belief in caring for others the way that we hope to be cared for, and that through positive collective action, we can make more good things happen. A peace monument in Central Square, placed in proximity to the existing statue commemorating the bravery of our military, will be a powerful symbol that ultimately, for all of us, peace is the outcome that we strive for personally, in our neighborhoods, in our region, our nation, and our world. So tonight, we, the Monadnock Interfaith Project, just want to convey that the clergy, the faith leaders, and local citizens of MIP are ready to work with this team and the city to place a message of peace as a permanent part of our public landscape. So thank you for taking this on in
Thank
a
you.
serious way.
Thank you for your thoughts. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name's Cameron Tees. I live at 21 Grant Street in Keene. I'm a member of the Rotary Club of Keene, and I'm the immediate past president. And the Rotary connection with this project proposal is very strong. Phil Wysick is also here tonight. He's the president of Keene Elm City Rotary Club. Our two clubs work in coordination on a number of things. With regard to local projects, Elm City is the backbone of the DeMar, and a lot of the proceeds go to like Sneakers for Kids and Community Kitchen and various things. With regard to Rotary Club of Keene, our local projects include Jane's Kids, which provides clothing for kids, elementary school children in need before they start school each fall. With regard to international or outside of the U.S., Rotary is very, very involved. Our clubs sponsor the Interact clubs at Keene High School and Monadnock High School. 30 students from both Interact clubs went to Puerto Rico in February and worked on a project refurbishing abandoned schools. I think there were 3 of them, so they could be community centers. Rotary Club of Keene is involved internationally with the Rotary Club of Einbeck-Northeim with regard to relief for Ukrainian refugees. So there's a connection between our clubs and the Rotary clubs in Germany in the Einbeck area. And the Rotary Foundation, Rotary International, over the years since its inception, has spent more than $4 billion on life-changing sustainable projects such as eradicating polio and providing scholarships to 7 Rotary Peace Centers located around the world. So Rotary has deep roots locally and internationally in terms of world peace. We believe that the proposal for the Peace Monument is very timely, and we believe that peace monuments or peace poles are powerful catalysts that bring communities together. A peace monument displays the message, "May peace prevail on earth," and usually includes this in additional languages meaningful to the host site. It is an international message of peace with over 250,000 peace monuments or poles found in every country in the world. So the Rotary Club of Keene and Keene Elm City Rotary support a peace monument on Central Square as an affirmation of peace by the people of Keene and to inspire unity among people of all cultures, ethnicities, and backgrounds.
Thank you, Cam.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Phil Wysick. I'm with the Elm City Rotary. I live at 15 Base Hill Road in Keene. I won't take much of the precious time of the committee, but it strikes me as I'm listening to my colleagues here just to say that I hope the idea of peace lands in everyone's heart, in every citizen of the Keene community. I hope it's a value we all share. And I look forward to the day when my grandson in school here in Keene can come with his class to Central Square and have the teacher talk about peace. Not only about international conflicts that result in war, but peace here at home, peace with each other, peace in our hearts, peace that makes the world go around. So I support the idea, of course, and I hope that the committee will bring this to the council for full consideration of this art project that we propose.
Thank you, Phil. This is an open conversation, so if there's any members of the public that would like to speak, now's a good time. Anyone else want to come forward? Committee? Committee? Yep.
I just want to thank the petitioners for coming up with this idea and bringing it forward. Being a member of the Human Rights Committee and chair of the Monadnock DEIB Coalition, this is definitely an initiative that I can get behind and support. I look forward to seeing the concept flushed out with the fountain a little bit more, because I think that might be a really great idea. So I look forward to hearing more.
Okay, thank you. Anything for, yep.
Just in addition to what Kat said, I just wanted to say thank you, because when you come to us and bring an idea and say that this is something that we want to support, we're willing to invest in it, you know, that says a lot, I think, and I really appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you. Furthermore, I want to thank the staff and consultants for coming up, city manager and deputy city manager for coming up with this great idea to make the fountain actually meaningful. So to me, I think that's very important, not just a pile of rocks spewing water. But anyway, I remember when the fountain was put in and what a big to-do that was, so I don't want to insult the former counselor that was all about that. So, and with great pleasure, I go to our new counselor, Favolis, for a motion, his first motion.
Would move to recommend that the city council direct the city manager to work with the petitioners to incorporate elements of the proposed peace pole into a new fountain design for the common.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Anything further from the committee, public? Therefore, all in favor? That would be unanimous, and I thank you. Thank you. Okay, moving along. We next have a PowerPoint presentation regarding the neighborhood parking project. Walker Consultants and our Jesse Rounds from our planning department. Or Mary, whoever. Thank you.
Yep, I'm on Teams.
Good evening. Welcome to Keene again.
Thank you. This is Mary Brenner, Senior Planner, and I'm joined today by Greg Strangeways from Walker Consultants. And I just wanted, I'm going to be sharing my screen here shortly with some slides, but before I do that, I just wanted to give a quick recap of where this project came from. So I believe you saw a presentation about this project back in January. But the genesis of this project really came out of the Housing Needs Assessment Report that was completed about a year ago in June of 2023. One of the recommendations from that report was to look at parking, which was highlighted as a barrier in some of the conversations that our parking consultants had with the community. And so we went after another, thank you. We went after another Invest NH HAP grant and received it for regulatory development. So the grant that funded this project is specifically to develop regulations that will help increase housing supply. So that's really where this project came from. So you'll hear Greg talk about this, the results of this project and some of the key recommendations that came out of it. But please keep in mind that it's all geared towards that grant goal of increasing housing supply. So I'll turn it over to Greg, and I'll get the slides up here in just a second.
Thanks, Mary. So as Mary mentioned, we were here in January. We were at the beginning of the project. We're now near the end. So we have a draft report. We have draft recommendations. We wanted to hit some of those highlights. I know you got a crowded agenda tonight, so I won't go through everything, but I think some of the important ones, and we do still have time for your feedback, either tonight or if you think of anything in the next week or 10 days. We are still finalizing everything, so there is time to give us feedback. As Mary mentioned, also, this is grant funded coming out of the Housing Needs Assessment. The study area is not downtown, but these neighborhoods adjacent to downtown, where it's already zoned for more density than is there today. So if there's going to be more housing, these are the likely areas. Again, you're not talking about sudden explosive development, but over time, allowing more housing. And as Mary mentioned, both here and really everywhere, providing off-street parking can be a barrier to that because it takes a lot of space, it takes a lot of money. So if there is a way to reduce the need for off-street parking, specifically this project was really focused on enabling more on-street parking to maybe reduce the need for off-street parking. So the on-street would provide some of that supply where possible. And then on a related note, we did some outreach. We have a couple of particular ordinances, which I'm going to stop and ask you if you have feedback on. Did just want to mention, we had an online survey. We had an open house early in the project. We were at the community night last week at the ice rink and DPW area. We do have a technical advisory committee, city staff from a lot of departments, police and fire and public works, and obviously planning and community development. One thing we heard really is that today most people don't really have the need for on-street parking, so they didn't give us a lot of comments about what's out there today. As you know, most of the houses have driveways that can hold, multiple cars, even if people have visitors. Most people just don't really use the on-street parking. But for the few who really do need to use it overnight because they don't have parking where they live, the winter parking ban is a major inconvenience. And I know, again, we're not the only ones who have been talking to you about this. So anyway, that is one of our major recommendations, and we do actually have an ordinance that's drafted. City staff is reviewing it. Your legal department is reviewing it. It will come to you, I believe, this committee. So to switch that overnight winter ban to a emergency weather ban, so only when there is inclement weather and you declare an emergency. Again, it sounds like there's already momentum here for the city to do this. But this does enable then more use of on-street parking, especially if it gets more formalized. In a lot of places, you have kind of informal parking on the street in these neighborhoods where people park, half in the street, half on the grass, just to keep out of the way. But if you are going to really formalize more on-street parking, then to be able to use it year-round, except for the few days a year where you have real snow or ice events, can help. So obviously, we are drafting an ordinance here, and I did want to stop and just get feedback on that. We're balancing, I guess, not being too prescriptive about it, but making sure there is enough in there that people would know who has the authority to declare this emergency, how much notice would be given. We don't want to probably get too into exactly the methods the city would use to tell people, but it would be multiple methods, and those could change over time as you find out what works. A lot of this we did, as you might imagine, look at peers. Portsmouth here in New Hampshire is a good peer that uses this kind of system, and we used some municipalities in Colorado as well. But anyway, I guess I did just want to stop there. If you have kind of thoughts, again, I think you're talking about this a lot anyway, but that you want to see in the ordinance or just in general in our recommendations about this.
Well, bit of a question. Is there an overnight ban on parking downtown at night in the summer?
So I believe there is. Our study area was actually not in the downtown, so we didn't focus on that as much. But I believe that's also part of it, yes.
Well, I would like to draw that into the conversation.
Yep.
It may not be part of your survey as such, but,
Yep, that makes sense, though, while you're thinking of changes, yep.
yeah. Yes, Counselor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have, it's not so much feedback, just a question. So when people are not able to park on the street because there's the winter parking ban, what kind of lots, did you get a sense of what lots they're using or where they're parking, or what's the alternative for them?
Yeah, I specifically remember one person at one of our meetings who said they have to move their car 3 times in 24 hours to make it work because you have these alternating nights in the lots. And then, so there's places she could park during the day and then overnight and then had to move again. So it was a lot of moving cars around. And again, it's a small percentage of people at this point, but that could grow again if you have more housing in these areas. And for those few people, it is a major inconvenience. Now, again, we were focused on these neighborhoods. I think you're also right to bring up that there may be many more people affected by the downtown ban.
Also, I think a lot of our regulations go back to when Keene State had 5,000 plus students and they were parking anywhere they could park.
Right.
Lawns or anywhere. So, but that was yesterday. So
Right.
I
Although it
think-
could be again someday.
Well, we'll deal with it then.
Yep.
Committee, anything? Go ahead.
Okay. So, yep, I do have a little bit more. And related to that, one other draft ordinance we're working on is to update the residential parking permit program. So to your point there about Keene State, I think you have a residential permit program now, but it's basically dormant. It hasn't really been needed, and I think some of that maybe is the reduced enrollment at Keene State. So again, we're looking at peers here. The idea again is if you're going to have more parking on street, then there may be more of a need in the future for a residential parking permit program to make sure that residents can get parking near their house and not have to compete with others from outside the area for whatever reason. That typically the competition happens more during the day from an institution like Keene State or commuters, employees coming into the area. So again, we're kind of looking at peers, drafting this. This would, be how to establish a zone, triggers that might get the city to study it and decide if a zone is appropriate, what the boundaries would be, how exactly the permit program would work. So again, I just wanted to stop on this one, then I have briefly run through some of our other major recommendations. But if there's any kind of feedback about that particularly.
I think keep going.
Okay. We did also present to the joint PLD and Planning Board a couple weeks ago, I think, about this. We have some zoning requirements. Again, we commend the city here for reducing some of the parking requirements that you've recently done in the last 3 or 4 years. One thing that we suggest, and I know there's maybe some statewide changes that could affect this and might work well with this, but is just to have specific reduced requirements for senior housing and affordable housing. From all the data, those have lower demand, parking demand than other types of housing, kind of makes sense. Just fewer people would have cars, or even households that have cars might have fewer cars. So we have some specific recommendations about adding that to your zoning ordinances. And then another thing we recommend often in places is to adjust the multifamily parking minimum requirements where you do feel you need them, and I know you've gotten rid of them in the downtown core here, but to do that by bedroom, so the size of the unit matters. Again, this kind of makes sense that the bigger the unit, more bedrooms, more people, more cars. So we have some suggestions here about further kind of refining your minimum parking requirements. And also then just part of our recommendations are on the demand side. So to think about not only the parking supply, but to reduce demand as you can. So wherever there is new development, the planning board, I believe, already has the capability to require some things. But, again, we just want to confirm that's really a good thing, whether it is, infrastructure for bicycles, lanes, racks, whether it is a transit stop. Part of our recommendations here, if possible, is to upgrade the transit service. It's, pretty limited hours. There is maybe some possibility to shift that transit service to on-demand, microtransit as it's called. That has come a long way and is easier. So again, to keep requiring that of new developments, we have some lighting recommendations in the report. So again, it's not easy, I know, but maybe when you're redoing a road, a few places could use lighting, and that can help people again be able to park further away or possibly walk or bicycle where they might not otherwise. Sidewalks, crosswalks, all of that. And employers as well, to encourage them to incentivize things that help manage the parking demand. Overall, we did find that in the study area, potentially you could have all of the new parking for the new housing that is projected over the next 10 years. You could have all of that on street. That probably won't happen. Some streets would have to become one way, but there is a significant supply there that could help at least reduce the need for off-street parking. So again, we kind of have a guide in our recommendations based on the length and width of the street. And then also on your parking services side, and the police, I know, do this nights and weekends, if you add more on-street parking, you may need to extend the hours and the areas of enforcement of that. So you do want to plan and budget for that. Parking should be self-sustaining as it already is for you, and even as you expand it, you want to keep that in mind, that the revenues should cover at the very least the added operating expense. So again, we have the Tech Advisory Committee reviewing all this. There is a way for people to slash parking on your website to give feedback. And then we are still finalizing. So if you have feedback now, or again, if you think of anything, soon afterward. And that's it.
Very good, very succinct. Thank you. Committee questions? Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know that you didn't focus on the downtown core district, but knowing that a discussion the city council has had recently that resulted in a proposal moving forward was about, or a study moving forward was about a downtown parking structure. If a large parking structure were built, I know it's not on-street parking, but would that potentially be able to absorb some of the demand for housing in adjacent areas?
Well, certainly in that area, yeah, I think for our study area, what that could help with is when you do get the snow events and people need to move their car off-street, that's what a lot of peer municipalities do, is offer them parking in municipal garages and lots. So that can at least, provide more supply for those. For the neighborhoods we were looking at, obviously the downtown garage would be a little far for people to walk. But it certainly, can help support, housing close to the proposed structure.
Thank you. Any public questions want to come forth or comments? Committee? Okay, well, I thank you both.
Thank you.
A motion, please.
I move to recommend to accept the PowerPoint presentation on the neighborhood parking project by Walker Consultants as informational.
Second.
Motion's been made by Council Workman, seconded by Filio, Council Filio. Anything further from the public or committee? Seeing none, all in favor? That would be unanimous, and I thank you. Thank you for joining us. Our next item is another PowerPoint presentation. We have our Public Works Director. This is your first evening in that position with us?
No,
Yeah? No? Oh. Anyway,
I was here last week.
okay, just,
Can you turn on your microphone?
Mr. Chair, while I log in here.
no first meeting. I'm not sure. Yeah. Oh, the workshop.
Yeah. Yeah, and I got it.
Trying to give him some accolades.
Probably should have logged in before I came in here.
Yes, Mr. Director, go for it.
So how have you been?
Just ducky.
I'm sorry, I'm logging in. I should have logged into my computer before the last one
A little
wrapped
soft
up.
shoe?
But yeah, we'll just do a little song and dance here while I get the presentation queued up. Oh, that's a good point. I guess Stephen could do it as well. I'm not logged in.
Yeah,
Is he-
I've got it
Oh.
if you're ready for it, or if
Okay,
you
well,
want to
there you
kick
go.
things off.
I'm panicked
Yeah.
for nothing, Steve. You let me swing here. All right.
Sorry about that.
So, Mr. Chair, then I'll actually close this and I can start talking, which I'm much better at, apparently. So thank you for having me, Mr. Chair. Don Lucier, Public Works Director. So with me tonight on screen is Steve Clark. He's with Answer Advisory Services. They were selected about a year ago now, actually, to do this study for us. So a little bit of background, I think, is in order. So we asked them to prepare a EV infrastructure plan. So, why did we want to do this? Well, to be quite honest, Public Works realized that we needed a little bit of direction and guidance. There's obviously been a lot of focus in the last year or two on electric vehicles and, the coming electric fleet. And manufacturers declaring that they're not going to be making gas-powered vehicles in such and such a year. So we realized that Public Works was going to have to play a role in providing charging infrastructure for the public, but also we wanted to look at what that's meant for our own fleet of vehicles. So we asked Steve and his team of folks to give us some guidance, things like what type of chargers do we need to provide for the public to support this electrification? How many? Where should they be? And again, also looking at the city's fleet and what makes sense for us to look at electric vehicle replacements for. I will say that my mantra to Steve and his team from the beginning was, this is really just focused on the near term. This industry is changing so quickly that we didn't want to try to project 20 years into the future. I said, focus on what we need to do to get through the next 3 to 5 years. That's kind of his marching orders. And the other thing I will say is, we asked him, when he was looking at the fleet specifically,
base your analysis on what makes economic sense for the city. We didn't ask him to, advance climate adaptation goals or, be at the forefront of municipal fleet electrification. We said, what does it make economic sense from just a dollars and cents perspective for us to convert to electric moving forward? If the city council wants us to be more aggressive and pursuing more sort of aspirational goals with the fleet, we can look at that, but that's not the analysis and recommendations that he's going to be giving you tonight, okay? The other thing I will say, and I'll let Steve take over, is the motion that's in front of you is really just sort of a check of the council's temperature. It doesn't really obligate any funds or anything like that. What we're really asking is are we heading in the right direction? And if so, we're going to go out and start looking for grant funding opportunities. There's a lot of money available right now for electric vehicles and electric vehicle charging infrastructure. We want some feedback from the council before we start putting our staff resources into trying to chase those grants. Right now, there is one that's open for applications that they're due in August, and that would probably be one that would fit pretty well with the recommendations that Steve's going to give you. So we just wanted to hear back from the council that that's what you want us to do. So with that, Steve, I hope I didn't steal too much of your thunder. But
No, it's
if you
perfect.
Go ahead
Perfect.
and share your screen and take it away.
All right. Can you all see my screen and hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. Thanks, Don. And good evening. My name is Steve Clark. As Don mentioned, I'm Vice President of Clean Mobility here at Answer Advisory. And I'm really excited to be here virtually, unfortunately, to walk you through all the work we've recently completed with the city with regard to a EV infrastructure plan. It's been really great to work with Don, Court, Mary, Chelsea, Jesse, Rebecca, Jim, and probably others that I've forgotten here to help prepare Keene for the coming surge in electric vehicles, as well as providing direction for the city's near-term investment in fleet electrification and public charging. I'd like to take 10 to 15 minutes. We'll try to keep it to that. Got a lot of ground to cover to walk you through some slides which highlight the key points of our EV infrastructure plan, and then certainly answer any questions you have. Before I begin, though, on a personal note, while I no longer live on the East Coast, Keene has a special place in my heart, as my dad grew up there, and I spent many a summer visiting my grandparents over on Blossom Street, and also cleaning out the Douglas Company after it inevitably flooded after heavy rain. So I know the city well, and it was great to go back. Actually, it was last summer, and spend some time there. So real quick, let's see, here we go. Before I get into it, brief bit about Answer Advisory. We're a nationwide firm that provides advisory services to our clients as they head down the pathway of decarbonization, energy efficiency, sustainability, and of course, electric vehicles. Like I mentioned before, the purpose of the EV infrastructure plan was to first understand Keene's previous directives related to EVs, what's been said before, and how can we continue the work within our plan. It's also to provide direction for Keene's investment in fleet electrification and public charging in the next 3 to 5 years. This is important, as Don mentioned, really focusing on those near-term actions that Keene can take today to help advance the city or the city's EV readiness and prepare for the surge in EV ownership and use amongst those who live, work, and travel through Keene. And probably most importantly, the plan provides the city with EV charging project concepts, layouts, and pricing, which are crucial to applying for funding currently available related to EV charging. With those project concepts in hand, Keene can better position itself to apply for available grant funding. So taking a look at the project background, in reviewing the material, it became very evident that Keene is a leader in planning for the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. You've been thinking about this for a long time and taking considerable steps to plan out what a decarbonized future looks like. From this review, we found direct support for the projects proposed by the EV implementation plan, from the desire to transition your fleet of gas and diesel vehicles to low or no emission vehicles, to a desire to evaluate converting the police fleet to electric, Keene has already thought long and hard about how to meet greenhouse gas emission reduction targets. Our plan, therefore, is set up well to help Keene realize some of those goals.
Time
So
out one
the
second,
scope of
please.
our
Can you
Yes,
turn
yes.
up your volume? Or move your microphone closer or yell into the microphone?
let me change my microphone. See if that helps. One sec here. Do that. One sec. I'll stop sharing. See if I can do it that way. How's that? Is that any better? Okay. Perfect. All right. Great. Let me share again here.
You went low again.
Oh, okay. How about now? Is that better?
A little more.
A little more. Okay. I'll talk loud. I'm good at that. Most people tell me I need to be quiet. All right. So, scope of the plan and what we're going to talk about tonight: stakeholder and community engagement, municipal fleet electrification, public charging on city-owned property, public parking facilities, potential funding sources to reduce the city's capital expenditures, best practices for the city to implement, and finally, recommended next steps. So let's dive in here. Stakeholder and public engagement were really designed to judge where public sentiment was with regard to EV chargers. While our team was in town evaluating potential charger sites, we also held a listening session breakfast for members of the Keene Energy and Climate Committee and the Monadnock Sustainability Hub to provide some initial feedback on EV ownership in Keene. We were happy to learn that there were a number of activities going on in your community with regard to EVs, but all agreed that further public education was necessary to overcome some of the, well, not so glamorous notions about EVs floating around. There was also a Go ahead.
Keep going.
Sorry. Okay. There was also some conversation about improving the permitting process to make it easier for private developers to install public-facing EV chargers, and also more clarity was sought regarding parking regulations when EV charging. Using Keene's existing flash vote survey platform, we also reached out to residents of Keene to gauge their willingness to see Keene invest in EV infrastructure and where they'd like to see charging around town. Some examples of responses we got: 40% of respondents were in favor of the city converting their vehicles to EVs, but only if there was a lower total cost of ownership. 75% of respondents said that the best place for public charging would be in downtown parking lots. Mirroring the listening session breakfast, 61% of respondents said that in order to reduce barriers to EV charging, the city should make it easier for private entities to install EV charging and meet public needs. This is an important distinction that I want to make sure is clear here. The public charging network can be owned by public or private entities who provide charging for EV drivers. So knowing Keene EV charging needs will be met by a mix of public and private investment. This really points to a strategic role for Keene to invest in EV charging to fill gaps where privately owned public charging network providers want to install. The last survey we conducted was designed to capture feedback from out-of-town folks as well as Keene residents to see if those who might consider using an EV to commute to Keene had different opinions. Results were fairly similar to information we collected before. 47% of respondents said that they would like to see more EV chargers in Keene before considering purchasing an EV, and they also ranked the downtown lots and Parks and Rec as the best spots for charging. All these surveys and the results are detailed more in our report that I believe was included in the agenda packet, if you want a much longer read. So having taken the public temperature on EV charging, I now want to shift to our analysis of Keene's own fleet of vehicles and how electrification over time might look. It's important to note here, as Don mentioned, that we follow the guidance and public opinion really on how to plan for fleet electrification, and that it should be based on economics first and foremost. The conversion plan was designed to maximize savings to the city by purchasing and operating EVs where it made financial sense, and continuing to purchase and operate internal combustion engine vehicles where an EV conversion didn't make financial sense. What this means is in the short term, the city should predominantly purchase hybrids and some EVs where possible for vehicles in need of replacement, trying to find full EVs for police vehicles as soon as suitable replacements are found. Medium term, Keene should look at converting light duty trucks and vans to full battery electric vehicles, and in the long term, convert the remaining sedans, SUVs, and heavy duty pickups to the lowest emission vehicle that exists. Following a plan like this, we did predict significant savings to be had versus the business as usual case, estimating about $2.5 million in operational savings over 20 years. I know that's longer than the time frame of this of our recommendations, but it says your investments now in EVs and EV infrastructure are going to pay off over time as you convert your fleet. And probably, more importantly, or just as important, is that, by converting your vehicles, you're reducing your greenhouse gas emissions over those same 20 years by almost 10,500 tons of CO2. So there is an environmental benefit to it as well. Based on this conversion strategy, we then looked at how many EV chargers would be needed at city facilities, as outlined here in the table on the right, to support a conversion to an EV fleet. And as you can see, Public Works, Parks and Rec will need the first chargers, followed by City Hall and Fleet Services. For those of you who are more visually inclined, these are some of our mock-ups as part of a larger deliverable, which you can, again, look at in more detail, but it's showing chargers, different kinds of chargers at each of the different services and where they might go. Switching gears back to public EV charging infrastructure, we used the existing work that the city had done to bound how many total chargers would be needed across Keene in the near to midterm future. On the low end of that estimate, assuming there's a high level of EV charging done at people's residences, Keene would need about 60 level 2 and 5 DC fast chargers by the end of 2028. On the high end, which assumes there's a low level of EV charging at people's residences, that number grows to 185 level 2 and 23 DC fast chargers. Important to note again, the city of Keene does not and probably should not own all these chargers, but it's the city's role to fill those gaps in the public charging infrastructure with the chargers on their own land. And so to that end, we evaluated 16 different potential public charging sites, as you can see, scoring them according to a criteria that we developed in conjunction with Don and his team. Top scoring sites were the Commercial Street lot, Parks and Rec, followed by Gilboa Street and Wheelock Park. For the top 2 sites, we performed a preliminary site layout and cost estimate to assist Keene in applying for grant funding. And those layouts look something like this. It's important to note that the Commercial Street charging hub is actually an expansion of the existing chargers that are there now. And Parks and Rec layout, to do more with less, actually shares a spot with the fleet charging. So it provides 4 spots for public charging and 1 spot dedicated for fleet charging. Looking at potential funding sources which Keene could consider to help offset or defer the upfront costs of EV charging around the city. These include both federal grants and tax credits, as well as charging at what we call charging as a service agreements, whereby upfront project costs are paid back over time on a per kilowatt hour basis to the ultimate owner of the stations. If you know how a solar PPA works, it's a similar thing, but for EV charging. No doubt you've heard of NEVI funding as well, which as a public entity, Keene isn't eligible to apply for, but it's important nevertheless because private developers will probably be leveraging this federal funding to bring additional public DC fast chargers to the alternative fuel corridors in the Keene area. I don't know if they've already done that or not, but it's certainly something to keep an eye out for. Looking at best practices through our public outreach and research as part of this project, we recommended a couple things which could help Keene better facilitate private development of public EV charging infrastructure. Everything from developing a scoring rubric to help developers understand how you're evaluating EV charging locations, to working with your local electric utility, Eversource to develop a guide to EV charging installation, to standardizing the permit and review process. Many of these actions can easily be completed and advertised to the private sector to pique their interest in helping you install public EV charging infrastructure in Keene. Right. So what do we learn from all this? Certainly, first and foremost, Keene has public support to offer public charging and electrify their city fleet if done in a fiscally responsible way. There are cost and CO2 emission savings to be had by strategically converting your city fleet of vehicles to hybrids and fully electric vehicles for the next 20 years. Together with the private sector, Keene should play a role in offering public charging on your land, especially to fill gaps where private developers may not necessarily install EV charging, such as near multifamily homes. Priority sites for EV charging. For the fleet, we're certainly looking at Public Works and Fleet Services, Parks and Rec, and City Hall. And for public charging, as I mentioned, an expansion of the Commercial Street lot charging hub, and also at Parks and Rec. There is external funding available to help offset costs, and there are a number of low to medium effort best practices that the city can implement to support the private development of public chargers. Lastly, next steps. Certainly Keene should use our layouts and budgetary estimates to apply for grant funding. Sounds like from his intro, Don is indeed already doing that, so that's excellent. Certainly using local champions and partners such as the utility to educate the public about EVs, looking at the current permitting process for EV chargers and folding in best practices if possible. Finally, from the city perspective, monitoring current EV product offerings and looking for those suitable vehicle replacements, especially for first responder vehicles, and really conducting a pilot, buying 1 or 2 vehicles, letting the city staff drive them, collecting feedback on the vehicles, the charging, to inform future purchases. I know that was a lot. Apologies, but certainly open to any questions that you may have.
Well, let me compliment you on distilling 150 pages into 15 minutes. Good job.
Yes.
And there's a question for our Public Works Director. So who's the point of contact in the city?
Phone, please.
What?
Can you turn on your microphone, please?
It is. Is it yours?
Yeah.
I'm on. Who is the point of contact for the city?
So the point of contact for this specific plan or going forward?
Going forward, if a property owner wants to get involved with.
So I think it's going to depend on what the specifics of the project is. If it's a property owner that's looking to install electric vehicle charging on their property, the point of excuse me, the point of contact would be community development. They would go through a permitting, building permit process for that installation.
But for information, it's community development.
If the project is on private property, yeah.
Yes.
If there's, EV charging developers out there that want to put EV chargers in our parking lots and not charge us. Hello? A little too much. It is.
Turn off the one to
No,
your,
it's turned, my laptop's
Right.
turned off. How's that? Oh, that's much better, okay. Odd. So if an EV charging company wanted to propose to put in a couple of DC fast chargers in one of our parking lots, they could certainly contact Public Works. So it just depends on who and what the project is.
okay, thank you. Committee question? Yeah.
I have a little bit more to say about this one, but I promise, Mr. Chair, I'll be mindful of the time. I want to start with what I really like about this proposal, which is I'm always happy to look at the way that our regulation and permitting process is, and if we can cut some red tape and support private development of anything, in this case, electric vehicle chargers. I have a little bit of a concern with both, two different concerns with the two different pieces of it. So first, with the installation of chargers potentially downtown, I guess a question I would have is to what extent the chargers that we have downtown are being used, how regularly, how much, because one of the commitments that we have been making through the downtown infrastructure process, those conversations, is that we're not going to be taking away parking downtown. We're not losing parking downtown. And to me, if you're tying up spots for electric vehicle charging when I'm not certain that the demand is there, then that does have the effect of taking away parking. So that's a concern that I have there. The other piece is that I don't dispute the 20-year kind of cost savings estimate, but if there's my support for investing in the electrification of the city's fleet would be 100% contingent on almost 100% grant funding for those things. We are asking our taxpayers to support a lot of investments up front right now. We just passed a budget that increased property taxes. We're about to vote later tonight on moving the downtown project forward, which is an investment for our taxpayers. And so a cost savings over 20 years with an increased investment up front, I think is a harder sell. So if there's grant funding available, and I know that city staff will go out and get after it, and if we get that, great. If this is going to result in an increased burden on the taxpayer in any way, then I'm more skeptical.
Thank you. Other committee questions? Public questions, comments? Okay, good presentation. Oh, Your Honor.
Yeah, thank you. Jay Kahn, 135 Darling Road. The state has interest in this as well. No, I'm saying the obvious there. But placing a charging idea beyond just the city so that it reaches highways and it allows for interstate travel. Not sure if that's going to be Southwest Regional Planning, but our efforts in the city just need to pair up with some bigger vision that does allow for that interstate travel.
Interesting. Thank you. Anyone else have any comments? Very, very good report, a lot to read, so hopefully you all will. Any motion, please?
Move recommend to accept the report as informational. City manager be authorized to do all things necessary to identify and apply for grants to help the city implement the report's recommendations.
Second.
And the motion's been made and seconded by Council Filio and seconded by Council Tobin. Anything further, committee, public? Seeing none, all in favor? We are unanimous. Thank you. And the next item on the agenda, another PowerPoint presentation. This is regarding the Roadway Safety Action Plan. Once again, Public Works Director.
I'm actually going to step off on this one, Mr. Chair, and I'm going to turn it over to my capable infrastructure project manager and his consultant.
Okay. And for the minute taker, if you could give us your name and address or company or.
Frank Kachalka, I'm with VHB. I'm the project manager.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, committee members. My name is Brett Rusnock. As Dawn said, I'm the infrastructure project manager at the Public Works Department. We are happy to be here tonight to provide a brief update about the city's progress on the roadway safety action plan. So a bit of history. In 2022, the city applied for a federal grant through the Safe Streets for All program. And that was a new program developed through the bipartisan infrastructure law, 5-year program from 2022 through 2026. And the goal of that program is to either eliminate or seriously reduce fatalities and serious injuries on roadway networks. So the city was successful in our grant application. We have a total of $350,000 from the federal government for this work, and the city is providing a 20% match for a total grant amount of $437,000. So tonight, I want to give the committee a brief update on the progress so far, and Frank's going to go into the details of how we've done that so far. And then at the very end, I'd like to give a brief outline of the next steps that we envision. So with that, Frank?
So thank you for letting us come present this. This is an exciting little program. Really takes safety as the forefront for the community. Oops. What did I do? What did I break?
So, should I just download it and open it rather than open it from here?
Yeah.
This is why Asa is not allowed to be sick.
So Andy, are the Red Sox playing tonight? Technical difficulty. Yeah.
Thank you.
We had commercials. That would be good. Yeah, just take photos of all of us while we're there. I've never seen the video before.
All right, there we go.
I'm glad I'm wearing a nice shirt.
All right, now we're ready.
Hello.
So, just go through here. There we go. So really, for the Safe Streets for All program, when we talk about streets, it's not just the roadway itself, it's really from right-of-way to right-of-way. So we're talking the roadway itself with the cars, vehicles, bike lanes, but also the sidewalks. So we're talking pedestrians. So all your vulnerable users. So everyone that's using the street, this program is for. We want to be inclusive, we want to look out for everyone. It's just not just vehicles like in the past. So the foundation of the SS4A, for kind of short term, is safe road users, like we talked about. You know, you have your walkers, your bikers, motorists, but also they've changed the way they looked at it. It's safe vehicles too. So we're looking at it from a holistic standpoint. Safe vehicles, safe speeds on the road, safe roads. So that means, do you have roads that are promoting speed, are promoting dangerous situations? Well, then we'll look at that as well. And then your post-crash care. So you're always going to have accidents. One thing that the federal government has changed was, you used to always say we had this vision zero, or 0 accidents. That's the goal. They wanted to get rid of accidents. They realized people make mistakes. There's no way to really make 0. So the real goal now is, if we make everything safer, roundabouts, slow people down at an intersection, that the fatalities and serious injuries would be a lot less. So that's kind of the goal of the program. There's different components with it, and this graphic kind of shows it. It talks, the inner circle is the safe system approach. Then you have the 5 components on the outside. But then on the exterior, you have your unacceptable, any deaths or serious injuries. Talking about humans make mistakes, kind of that framework. So it kind of all works together. It's not just one piece, it's everything. So with the components for the Safe Streets for All program, there's a couple things that we need to do to really understand what's going on. And I'll kind of go through each of these to kind of give you an overview of where that action plan and how that's going to be developed. So with the data analysis, we know from crash data, we get that from Department of Safety and the New Hampshire DOT, we know where accidents happen. So this graphic here is what we call a heat map. The brighter colors, the yellow, are where most of the accidents are, and then as you get away and fewer accidents, or the sparsity of it, it turns purple or blue. So you can kind of see downtown, you would think a lot of traffic, that's where some accidents are, some crashes, and really, it's every type of crash. We're not talking just motor vehicle to motor vehicle, it's pedestrians, it's bicyclists. So that's kind of where we start. That's the framework for what we know. So now we're going to be, that's reactive. We know where the accidents are. Now we got to take a proactive approach. Where are locations in the city that have similar characteristics to where these accidents are occurring, and can we make those locations safer, or can we make these locations that we know safer? So now we got to take a proactive approach. And then the next thing we did with the data analysis is what we call a high injury network. We look at all the roads in the city. Now these are all the roads, so municipally owned and state owned. So we look at everything. What we identified here was 15 segments of roadway that have a higher percentage of accidents than the rest of the roads. So you'll see, Main Street, you would assume, with the traffic, but there's a higher percentage. You have some outliners towards the north and to the west. Doesn't mean we only look at that. We're looking at everything, but these stand out because of the number of accidents that occurred. And then the other thing we do is the program has to have equity. It has to look for everybody. So disadvantaged communities that we have in Keene is that gray area. So we need to focus also on that. This is for all. So it doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter where you're going, where you're from, everything, it all has to stay the same. And one of the things with the disadvantaged communities we look at is also equity. So we take this and we kind of look through Keene and say, where lower income, families with no cars, older population, those type of communities have a higher percentage of usually getting in accidents. So we look at that and we're going to analyze that. So when we collect all this data, we focus on that as well to kind of really make sure that, all right, we need to focus these people, these types of situations to make it better for all. Project goal and objectives. So we worked with a steering committee that the city pulled together, a good diverse group. And we have a goal that we figure they came up with. We didn't propose it, we kind of helped facilitate, but basically it's reducing the number of fatalities and serious injuries by 50% by 2035, and then working towards 0 by 2045. So that's the goal that this plan will help. We'll have objectives of really addressing the fatalities and serious injuries, using the safe system approach to the transportation in Keene, focusing on that, showing how that works, but also engaging with partners and really the community itself. It's not just the city. It's really everyone. It's the public. Everyone's in this together. So that's kind of how that fosters that culture of safety comes in. So we talk about the crashes, and it's a comprehensive data. We have a ton of data, but the data only tells certain things. It tells what's happened. We really needed to do a stakeholder engagement. So what we did was we developed a website that we worked with the city, put on, talked about what the Safe Streets for All program was, information there, but also had our survey that we put out to everyone. We needed to hear from the public So that's where we had this 14-question survey. I have to give Keene a load of credit. I mean, we had 532 responses. Other surveys we've done, we're lucky if we get 200. But those questions, people were really engaged. We had maps that you could put pins on for certain things. We were able to download that. I think we had over 1,100 pins. So we had substantial amount of information to use. But we didn't stop there. That's the public. We also had the Road Safety Planning Committee. That's, the steering committee that we worked with. We met monthly with them. We also had the Tech Advisory Committee we met monthly with. So that's your city staff. Getting information. We, as consultants, even if we live here, we don't know everything. We need the feedback from the public. So these two committees help, but really the stakeholder listening. We had 7 meetings, and we had neighborhood meetings on the east and the west side, bike and ped, and the school districts. Not only did we do just the SAU 29, but we did the higher education. They play a part too. They have students coming in. They're unknown sometimes to Keene, so we need to know them as well. And also the major employers, your big companies that have their responsibility. Not everybody's in Keene, so we need to know that. And then, of course, MSFI committee. So this is the first time we're in front of you. We will come back again when we're farther along with the plan, but we will be doing that. So really, now we have 2 things. We have all this data with the stakeholders and all the crash data. So now we need to look at strategies and countermeasures. What are these countermeasures? Basically, what can we do out there? Federal Highway, on this website here, they have a whole toolbox of what we can do. We also have other things we're gonna look at, and we're gonna make strategies of, we're gonna look at locations, we're gonna look at whether it's a spot or a corridor, say West Street. Maybe there's ways we can improve it. We're gonna come up with recommendations based on these strategies. So on this graphic here, you can see on the right, the 528. Those are all the dots that we got from people. So you can see it's a pretty spread out, a lot in downtown, but it did reach outside. And then what we did was, at the middle was, we had each of the committee members, not telling them what the survey presented, ask them independently. You tell us your location. So we wanted to have this independent feel. They were very much matching what the survey was. So I guess in a way it's good, and I guess, it kind of works that way. So we're gonna take this information, we know where the problems are, we're gonna come up with project recommendations. So these recommendations in the plan will be kind of, what can we do? Is it low term, short term, mid-term, long-term, cost, low cost, mid-cost, high cost, who's responsible, items like that. But in order to do that, we need to prioritize all this information. So we're looking at these locations. We came up with an evaluation criteria to help us kind of prioritize where we're looking. So this is where we currently are, is we just worked with the city for some initial evaluation criteria. We're now gonna take, I think, 100 and something projects that we can potentially see, and we're gonna kind of now prioritize, see where these come in based on this draft evaluation criteria. And by that, we'll be able to do a scoring and kind of identify where those go. And then the last thing, the graphic shows all the crashes that we understand. So we're gonna take the scoring, we look at it from a quantitative and qualitative. So the amount of crashes, but also a qualitative standpoint, to figure out how this all comes together in the report to identify the safety that we need to be out there. And then in the report, we're currently drafting. It's gonna talk about introduction. We're gonna talk about how we came to this. So basically, we're gonna get in depth on the summary that we provide here. And then at the end, we'll also provide funding sources that we know of. So there is the grant program that the city got from this, which was part of that bipartisan infrastructure law. There's a second part of that for just that grant, that by doing an action plan, you can go after infrastructure money. That's not the only way, but in order to go after it, you have to have an action plan. So this is kind of the first step of this grant. Then the second part would be demonstration or implementation and infrastructure. But also there's other ways that, there's other grants out there, and every day the federal government's putting more out there. So we'll provide the city with that. When this action plan gets developed, it's not a checkbox just because we went to the grant. At least that's not how we're looking at it. It's basically, it's a living document. So you're gonna have all the information, you're gonna have your projects, but it's gonna sit on a desk and it gives the city means. So in a year, you're repaving a project, you may wanna upgrade your curb ramps, you might wanna put sidewalk in, or you can go to the plan and look at it. And we're gonna provide a mechanism for the city to update it. So when we and our contract's done, the city can then keep going and updating and going along. So it's kind of a thorough, comprehensive, data-driven plan that can be built on. And with that, I knew you guys were short on time, but if I went too fast, I apologize.
No, you didn't. You're good.
So,
The good news, that little cluster of dark dots around Main Street and Central Square, taken care of. We got it. So, by the time we're done building, it's going to be a clear area. So we'll hit your 45-year goal or whatnot. Question probably for the city manager. What I'm hearing is that the roadway safety action plan is developing. I don't think we want to
Yeah, that's it. I think the motion should just be accept as informational, the report is informational.
Okay, I didn't want to suggest that
Yep.
and derail
Nope.
something else going on. Okay, questions? Committee? Public? Oh, public. Good evening.
Vicki Morton, 275 Water Street. Could you further explain the disadvantaged community section and the implications of such a label?
That's a tough one.
So disadvantaged community is established through the federal government. That is a tract of land that the federal government or the federal transportation have identified as, disadvantaged. It's not something the city, not something that we classified, we used that. The program purpose has been all along is to make sure that this is equal for everybody. So by establishing and knowing where those tracks are, they're able to know that you want to do improvements throughout. You don't want to exclude them, you want to be all inclusive. There's no negative tone there, it's just making sure that we're equal. That's the goal.
I think I understand your thoughts. It did kind of set me back a bit. We may have more problematic areas, but certainly, yes, ma'am. In a moment. 1 minute, please. Come down. It's okay. But I don't think that we identify any area of the city as disadvantaged. And I kind of take offense to the phrases, I think.
And I
others
think in the
do.
report, we'll make sure that we explain that. We'll make sure, so it's a public document, so we'll
Yeah,
make sure.
okay, just pointing it out. Counselor, okay. And now, please.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Sizo, 10 Fairfield Court. So I don't think any of us are familiar with that term, and some of us live in that area. Could you explain what that means, since you're familiar?
I wish I had more explanation on that, to be honest.
Right, and I think we want to delete it from our vocabulary.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Don Lucia, Public Works Director. I can actually really sympathize with, the raised cockles on that phrase. I will say this is a federal government term that's applied on a census tract by census tract basis. And it looks at things like The average median income of the households within that census tract compared to statewide averages. Age of the population within that tract versus the statewide averages. It's like broad brush statistics. It's not a reflection or a negative connotation towards the neighborhood of the people that live in it. And I will say, there's an advantage to being disadvantaged. Frank mentioned the no. Frank mentioned the implementation grants that are also offered through this program. Those grant applications get extra points if your project lies within a disadvantaged census tract. So the advantage is we're more likely to get funding to do improvements in your neighborhood because it's a disadvantaged census tract. Again, it's not a reflection of the neighborhood, it's a reflection of statistics.
I think we should make the whole city disadvantaged, get more money. Okay, I think everyone's got the point, and not to belabor too much, yes.
Not to belabor it too much, but I actually, when I was doing research on the city and this actually came up in my research, this census tract. As I thought about it, in that area, there are a lot of Keene housing properties, so there are a lot of pedestrians, which could actually impact, and for what it's worth, I was really excited to hear that, because I'd been hearing about challenges in that area with safety, and now knowing that we could have more of an opportunity to address some of those. So I was actually really excited because it felt like an opportunity, and as a pedestrian, it was really exciting to kind of be part of this process and to hear the kind of shift to multimodal transportation and the focus on that. That was exciting to kind of hear that, and so thank you.
Anything else? Anyone else? And at the suggestion of the manager, motion would be to accept this informational, please.
Not
what it says.
Right. Move to recommend to accept the presentation on the roadway safety action plan project as informational.
Second.
Good. Motion's made and seconded. Anything more from the committee? Public? Brett?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one thing I wanted to acknowledge. Councilor Tobin has been serving as a member of the Roadway Safety Plan Committee, and she's been very active and engaged. And we also have the esteemed city manager, Elizabeth Dragon, also serving on that Roadway Safety Plan Committee. So we have a really good, diverse group of safety advocates who are providing a lot of great feedback and input to that plan. And just to set some expectations about the schedule, we are planning on meeting with that committee in August of this year, and likely also in September. We'd like to give them a really good chance to review and approve the plan. And then likely we'd be coming back to the MSFI committee in October to look for a recommendation. So thank you.
Good, thank you. Anything else? Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor? We are unanimous. Thank you for joining us this evening. Drive safely. Okay, and for our next presentation, we have never had so many presentations in this committee.
Never.
Yeah, okay, well, okay. Okay, next we have a verbal presentation, Customer Service Opportunities for Community Development and Fire Prevention. Ooh. That is one heck of a title.
It took me almost 15 minutes to figure that one out.
Yeah.
Thank you. So Mr. I'm surrounded. Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the MSFI committee. I have not seen you for a long time, and I'm seeing a new person. You know, the city manager several months ago asked me to look at the business practices of the
Your name, please.
Excuse me?
Your name, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. Med Kopczynski.
Okay, I'll abuse you while I can.
Okay, thank you. I just started today. So anyway, the city manager several months ago asked me to do an analysis of the business practices on the fourth floor of community development. And, you know, Mr. Chairman, through the years, you've always had a tendency to ask me what hat I was wearing when I came before you, if you remember. This hat in particular right now is advisory to the city manager and really giving a good look at the business practices and what we can do to improve them. To conduct a review, I began with recommendations that originated out of two separate economic development plans that were chaired actually by you, Mr. Chairman. And, you know, in the reports where there was a sense of the committee that code enforcement and planning should merge into community development to provide better, faster services to our citizens. So comparing that idea with the reality of where we are and what we can do to improve. You know, central to this review was recognition that the goals set for the department by city manager and the city council would frame the results of the report. But more importantly, upon analysis of operations, where should we change to meet the overarching goals of providing superior customer service to our citizens and clients? That's really the central theme of this. And basically what this report does is creates a backbone or a strategic plan or however you want to call it that if followed, we believe will actually do that. The report has a utility as a blueprint or a plan that can be used to change the paradigm of operations to achieve a high level of competence as well as customer service. The subject areas that we covered, Mr. Chairman, and if we reduced this to slides, we'd be here for probably another hour. Right? So I'm honoring your 10-minute rule. Building safety and fire prevention, code enforcement, planning, software, housing developer training and support. We feel a very great need to begin to integrate what we do with the general public so that we have less friction and more understanding of what we do, both from the standpoint of staff understanding what happens when you're trying to do a project, but also for the people who are doing a project to have a better understanding of processes, make things smoother. And most importantly, communication and outreach. That's definitely something that we need to step to the plate on in this process. We have a lot of ideas along those lines. Basic issue here, Mr. Chairman, is to cultivate a customer service-oriented culture. And I will tell you, we're already making progress on this report, which was just turned in, but we're already making progress. I did have both Mr. Richard Wood, who is our fire marshal, building official, he's here tonight, the participant in this process, as well as Jesse Rounds, our community development director. And with that, Mr. Chair, especially if you have very pointed questions, I'm going to step back and let them take over from them.
Thank you. As Med said, my name's Richard Wood. I'm the fire marshal and building official here for the city. Thanks for having us tonight in my middle of my 11th week here with the city. Things are moving very fast and productive and rewarding, so thanks for having us. As you know, one of the primary focuses of me coming on board was really to look at and evaluate this whole permitting, inspection, and enforcement system, right, with the goal to create this continuous improvement customer experience through engagement, transparency, efficiency, collaboration, communication, ultimately leading to a citywide approach instead of a departmental approach. So with that said, just a couple of high-level things that we've been working on that kind of go along with what Med said. First and foremost is the customer-centric culture, to get that to permeate throughout the department in the division. Some of the things we've worked on along that line, simplifying permit and inspection where possible, things like online permitting. We are ultra close to having some of the gas and oil permitting going online, very close. Probably within a week or so is the goal. Given the holiday, maybe not, but that's the goal. Elimination and duplication of the services, we've already done some of that, so there were some things that were being duplicated between fire and building, that's already ceased, such as smoke detector inspections in single-family homes, great example. efficient utilization of personnel and resources, some duplication when we investigate code enforcement actions. So we've kind of centralized that a little bit and assigned resources more efficiently. The bigger picture, just seeing us as facilitators, not regulators, I think that's one of the cultural pieces that goes along with what we're trying to accomplish. Along with that, we have some ideas around staff training and mentorship, community engagement, as Med said, and contractor engagement and training, and all of those hopefully will lead to that viewing us differently. Proactive delivery of service is kind of the last kind of a pillar in that group. And really, one of the things we've envisioned is voluntary project review during design. Some of the uncertainty that happens at the end of a project creates a lot of both financial anxiety and developer anxiety. So just like we do with planning projects, right, allowing people an opportunity to get in front of us before they've finalized design, potentially in design development to provide feedback. We feel that'll do two things. A, it'll help us enhance the permitting rapidity process, right? Short-circuiting a little bit of time there because we'll have great familiarity with the project. But it'll also develop a partnership between the people who are doing the project and us in the community development side. So those are some of the three things within customer service. The other thing is we've actually initiated a self-evaluation through the International Accreditation Services Building Department Review Program. And what that is looking at our organization through the lens of an accreditation agency. This recognition is short of accreditation, but what it forces us to do is evaluate ourselves as well as have them evaluate us under a list of metrics. I can't remember the exact amount, but it's around 84. We've submitted a first round on that and gotten some feedback to provide some guidance on where to head. And then lastly, enhancing the review and management of enforcement in complex cases. As I'm sure you folks know, there's a lot of moving pieces when we start looking at how do we create an enforcement environment that works both internally and externally, right? And so one of the things that we're starting to do is utilize the systems we have a little better. So there is an online complaint portal where people can not only enter complaints or concerns, but also can go and view the activity with those complaints and concerns. So that's something we're trying to get greater visibility out there on so that people have a more direct pathway to engage. And with that, I'll respect the 10-minute rule and go less.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Committee. Jesse Rounds, Community Development Director. And I just want to echo everything that's been said tonight, but also I really appreciate the time that Med spent on this report and the ideas that Rick has been able to implement and that we're starting to implement across the board. We're looking at department-wide visioning as well as division visioning to try and get at what are our goals. And a lot of that is going out to the public and saying, what do you want our goals to be? So we're going to be back here talking to you about what you want our department to be able to do. And I think it builds on the committees that have met before, and then Med's report is a huge part of that. So just want to say thank you and really appreciate the opportunity to sort of carry this forward.
Thank you. I love everything you were saying. It's a positive attitude. It's solutions, not problems, and it's not obstacles. The object of the game is to get to yes. And if it's working in partnership with the homeowner or the business owner, we all want a safe environment, and I like it. And I will, kind of sidebar, I'm in the midst of a project and I'm living it. It's good. There's a good attitude coming forth. It's always frightening, but at least so far it's all been very positive. So you're doing good. In how many days?
11 and a half weeks. This is the middle of the 11th week, excuse me.
Well, welcome to Keene. Thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, just leave you with two thoughts. We're really intent on cultivating a customer service-oriented division, department, operation, and all of the work that you're going to see is going to be in that regard. Of course, we're also going to increase the technical abilities of our staff, and we're going to do a lot of training and things like that. One of the key concepts is continual improvement, continual review. if we were in industry, if we were a factory, we'd be talking about lean processes. And it's very similar to a lean process in how you do that, right? I think you've got the tools. I think you've got the people. I think you have the will. I'm hoping that these two individuals will come back to you from time to time to fill you in on where they are. As a matter of fact, I would request it if I could, because I think it's important to have that dialogue, and it's important to have that dialogue with the public, the people that use the system, and let them be a participant in how we make this work the way it should. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I think I've honored your 10 minutes,
Yeah.
maybe a little bit more, but not too much.
Okay, don't get up yet. There's a question coming from the back.
Vicki Morton, 275 Water Street. I may be the most enthusiastic public member about a redesign, revamping of the Code Enforcement Office. And in this revamp, I certainly hope that it would get more proactive and less reactive, because if you have to tattle on your neighbors in order to improve a situation, you can get personally threatened. Personal experience. So I welcome this. I'm looking forward to what the next step is in the next report. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. On that subject, Mr. Chairman, one of the things in the report it does identify this discussion on reactivity and proactivity. And we've had that discussion through the years, but I think you're going to have that discussion, and you're going to have to really have the support of the public and the discussion with the public and the city council as to how proactive you can be and how proactive you want to be. That's a discussion to come, but it's clearly articulated in that plan as an item that needs to be examined.
Thank you. Committee, you have anything further? Yep, Laura?
I just want to say thank you very much. I'm really excited about this. I get excited whenever I hear the word communication. And as someone who has gone to the 4th floor asking for information several years ago about tenant rights and, not being able to find that information, it's really exciting to kind of see that happening. And so thank you.
Thank you.
Public? Okay, before I let you go, Med, because this is my last shot at you, is Med is moving on to other excitement.
Other adventures.
Other adventures. So I just want to say thank you for all that you've done in terms of all the different hats that you've worn, and Uncle Med at times, and, city manager at times, and code enforcement guy, and thank you very much.
I've been the infield utility, right?
Yeah, that's it.
Pretty much. All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And by the way, it's been a pleasure serving you. It's been a pleasure working for you and working with you.
Thank you. Okay, down there.
Move to recommend that the council accept the presentation on customer service opportunities for community development and fire as informational.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded, seconded by Council Filio. Anything further, committee or public? Seeing none, all in favor? Once again, we are unanimous.
3-minute break.
What?
3-minute break.
Well, you can get up and leave. I am going to take a bit of chair prerogative, and if there's no great objection from the committee, move the final item regarding the stop signs up before we get into the downtown presentation, which is probably going to take a lot longer than the stop sign issue. So who is presenting the stop signs on Water Street? Good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Don Lucier, Public Works Director. So the ordinance tonight is a request to install stop signs on Water Street at Grove/Community Way. So this recommendation came out of sort of a neighborhood-wide effort we did recently. And you recall last month we presented a speed study that the neighborhood had requested. And during that, we found that there wasn't a huge a speed issue, but at the same time that we were presenting that, we looked at a couple of intersections specifically that we had gotten requests from, you know, different people to look at different intersections, two of which were in the east side of Keene. One was at the intersection of Emerald and Ralston Street, but to evaluate those for potential all-way stop control, you know, four-way stop signs. So we looked at those, and of the three, Water and Grove actually met the MUTCD criteria, both for the number of vehicles passing through that intersection, but also, and I think more importantly, for the accident history. That intersection had a total of, I want to say it was 7 accidents over a 42-month period before we did the analysis back in February. And that's more than enough to justify the application of a stop sign. So during the traffic calming presentation that we did last month, one of the neighborhood residents mentioned that she thought that that intersection was originally installed with a four-way stop sign. We looked through the city's records, city code, you know, different record sources that we had, including the project documents from the reconstruction of Grove Street, the reconstruction of Water Street, west of that intersection, 2 separate projects there, as well as the railroad land development project where Community Way was built. And throughout those and throughout the analysis of the code, you know, I also spoke to some of the folks that have been working at Public Works for 20-plus years, and I'm fairly well convinced that that was never an always stop condition. So I think maybe there was just a confusion about that you know, history of that intersection. So the recommendation stands. We are recommending that be converted to an always stop. If it's approved on July 18th by the council, we would schedule a time when our sign guy can install those signs. At the same time, we're going to put out like our message boards in advance of the intersection. So we'll let people know, hey, pay attention, there's a stop sign here now. So we'll you know, that may not appear directly on the 19th of July. We'll have to figure out when the message boards are available to be deployed there. But we'll schedule a time that can be done in a way that will give people a fair warning that traffic laws have changed at that intersection.
Thank you. I'm supportive of it. I like it very much. I would also like in the future to give consideration to South Lincoln Street and on Roxbury Street at the North and South Lincoln Street.
So Roxbury at Lincoln was one of the other intersections that we evaluated, and that one did not meet the MUTCD criteria, no.
And it has to meet that criteria to...
It doesn't have to. The MUTCD is guideline, it's not law. It is a guideline that the state of New Hampshire has adopted as its design guide and sort of the rules that the state follows. The city, in turn, has written into its code that we follow the New Hampshire DOT traffic control guidelines, which references the MUTCD. So by reference, it's the guidelines that we've all agreed to follow. But even within that guideline, it says very clearly that meeting a criteria for an always stop condition doesn't mean you're obligated to install a stop sign, and conversely, failing to meet any of the criteria by themselves doesn't mean that you can't install a stop sign. This is what the city attorney's office would consider sort of a discretionary function of the legislative body. So if the city council wants to change the ordinance and install a stop sign there, you have that authority. But from an engineering analysis perspective, it's not recommended.
Okay, conversation for another night. Yes. Vic.
I promise, this is my last. Vicki Morton, 275 Water Street. I have a great deal of difficulty in supporting this. I understand the reason for it, but it is actually 5 cars coming to an intersection because there's 2 lanes on Grove Street. So you have 5 cars coming to an intersection when it's difficult for 4 people to decide who's going to go first. And you can't really change human nature overnight, and I just think that it's going to create a greater hazard to have stop signs there rather than one direct, what we currently have with a direct line through and stop signs on the other sides. As much as I do not like traffic lights, and I understand the cost thereof, I would prefer a traffic light there that tells people who gets to have the next turn. But I think having 5 cars there, all trying to decide who's going to go next, is not going to be a safe situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is an intersection in my ward, and I drove out there today before this meeting. I guess a question for the Public Works Director is, it didn't seem to me like necessarily an inherently dangerous intersection. So it wasn't like 2 main thoroughfares connecting. Community Way is very much kind of a road through a parking lot, and then Grove is largely residential as well, not really a thoroughfare. And so I have a kind of comment after this that's a little bit different, but my question is, what is it about that intersection that a stop is needed there because or I guess what caused that intersection, the accident level that is now necessitating in your mind the 4-way stop there?
The short answer is, unfortunately, I don't know what caused each of the 7 accidents over the 3.5-year period. And actually, I'm not privy to the traffic accidents. There's a lot of rules regarding release of traffic accidents, crash reports, to anybody but law enforcement. So it's been something that's unfortunate. It's a bit of a pet peeve of mine that the folks responsible for the safety of the road network don't have access to the information that would help us do that. But be that as it may, so I can't tell you why there's these 7 accidents, but that's what the data shows.
Okay, just a follow-up question. So a follow-up question to that, is there an engineering element of that in your expertise in engineering?
There's nothing obvious about that intersection that should lead to that level of crash, history. The sight lines are very clear and go on for days. I don't think it's a visibility thing. There's not objectionable curvature. So, like I said, there's nothing obvious or intuitively wrong with the design of the intersection that leads me to say, this is the problem that's causing these accidents.
And so then my comment, Mr. Chair, if I could just end with this, is that recognizing that I think this is probably going to move forward out of committee, I do still think that concerns that East Keene residents and Southeast Keene residents have about traffic enforcement in neighborhoods continues to stand, and I would, regardless of whether this moves forward or not, and again, I think it will, I think that's something that needs to continue to be a part of the conversation is traffic enforcement in addition to any signage changes. And I recognize that's not yours.
Honestly, I'm very surprised. When as Martin came up, I thought you were going to be in total support of this, and this just surprised me a bit. So whose idea was this anyway?
I actually don't know who submitted the original request to look at that intersection. It was submitted through our resident reporting engine, and I don't recall who asked for it.
I thought it was something in staff or consultant or like that.
No, it was
7 accidents in
resident.
36 months doesn't sound that. And we don't know the severity of the accidents.
Well, one of the accidents I do know. Unfortunately, one of the roles of the city engineer's office is when there's significant accidents, the police department calls us out to do accident surveys. And one of the accidents I do know involved a gentleman on a motorcycle. I believe he ended up losing a leg because of the impact. So it was pretty severe.
Okay, committee, some discussion? Yep.
I thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that I'm probably going to vote against this in committee tonight because I do think that the really overarching issue is enforcement. My mind may change, and I'm open to, additional conversations in the next, I guess, month, now before council, but I recognize this is going to move forward, but I'm not comfortable supporting it right now.
Might be surprised, Jacob. Anyone? Yeah.
Yeah, I know, been doing this for a while, and stop signs always seem to be controversial no matter where we put them. I'm going to support this. And it's basically because the traffic studies and the accidents, the data shows it. Sometimes, as we've heard, sometimes we hear the people speeding on my street, but the data doesn't really support it. But with this particular intersection, as far as accidents go, the data supports it. So, sometimes emotion can get in the way of votes that a council makes. I get that. But sometimes you have to go for the down and dirty information that the Public Works Director brings to us. And even though I'm not one to stop at another stop sign again, but I think this particular intersection needs it, I will go with the Public Works recommendation and vote for it.
I would agree with Councilor Filio. Someone brought the intersection to our attention as a problem. I don't know that I can't be sure that this is the best solution, but this is the recommendation that has been supported. And I would say that because it was brought to our attention, we looked at it, it's good to try something different, and this is what the recommendation is at this time. So I'm comfortable supporting it. Thank you.
I've stayed silent too long. All I can say is I agree with Councilor Filio that the information, the data supports this. Just anecdotally, this intersection makes me think of the three-way stops on School Street and Castle.
Mm-hmm.
And just the other day, on Wednesday, Juneteenth, I was coming out of Castle Street, and someone blew through the stop sign from West Street down to School Street. And had I not been stopped and aware, I would have gotten T-boned by that car. So I see this four-way intersection, all stop, functioning quite like that. Creating that hard stop for people. If someone is going to ignore a stop sign, it's going to mitigate someone else from getting seriously injured. So it will at least reduce the speed. Even if they do take impact, it would reduce the velocity of that impact. So I support this.
Yes. Councilor Haas.
Ed Haas, 114 Jordan Road. Nobody likes four-way stops. They're awful. You got to negotiate them. You got to deal with everybody coming from different directions to understand how they work. But I think this came out of the traffic study that was done, where we found that the 85 percentile was about 30 miles an hour with outliers. And I think it's those outliers that drives everybody's perception of how unsafe Water Street is. It's a through street. It's got a great view as you go down, as you come down the hill, and you can just see where you're going and you can have at it. I have to step on the brake to make sure I don't have at it. The perception of the speed is the hazard here. The four-way stop was an easy way to try to slow people down. Nothing more than that. The real answer here is some traffic calming arrangements, some better design of that intersection, but that's a bigger capital project than a four-way stop at this time. So, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. I am loath to disagree with the esteemed Councilor Haas. I want to be very clear for the record, because I'm sure that there's going to be other requests that come forward, and I'm going to be arguing the other way. We are not recommending this four-way stop in order to address speed. As the councilor mentioned, we did look at the speeds on Water Street. I think the 85th percentile just to the east of this site was about 34 miles an hour, is a little bit over the speed limit, but you know, within the sort of expected range of normal behavior. We're specifically recommending the stop sign here because of the accident history. I would agree with Councilor Filio. I would prefer to not have, you know, more stringent traffic control than is warranted and needed. But because of the accident history, I think that there needs to be a little bit more control at this intersection. We're not trying to address speed.
Thank you. I've heard that phrase before. Normally, I hate the phrase "more time." However, I've heard some things that I want to look at that intersection again. So the chair is going to move to put this matter on more time till the next MSFI meeting.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Yes, committee? You ready to vote? Okay, all in favor of more time? All not in favor of more time? I guess we're moving forward. And go ahead, tell me, I will have another week to think about it before council. So, it'll sound hypocritical, but, okay, calling the motion as such. Do we have a motion? No, we don't. Yeah, go ahead, make a motion.
Move to recommend the adoption of ordinance O-2024-11.
So,
Motion's made and seconded. Anything further, committee, public? All in favor? Yeah, I'm a hypocrite. I could vote no in council. Opposed? He's a soul man.
I may end up doing the opposite.
Yeah, you have the opportunity. And to the Stantec guys, I apologize. I thought this was going to be a simple one, but, okay. So we are done with everything else on the agenda except for the main event. We have been working on the downtown plan, going on for 4 or 5 years or something. But in this most recent iteration, this committee made a commitment to come forth with a plan by this meeting, and the consultants from Stantec made it, and our Public Works Director made it, and our City Manager made it. So I brought a bit of history before you get into yours. See, when they talk about change, I don't know if this will show on the TV. Welcome to Central Square and downtown Keene. You will notice, maybe you have the picture. You will notice there's no monuments, there's nothing, there's no cars, not an awful lot of buildings. Change is what goes on. But I think that the plan that you are about to see marries change with common sense. It's not extravagant. There's been a lot of compromise, and I hope that members of the public agree, and fellow city councilors will agree, and the committee, I think it's worked really quite hard. You're going to hear the phrase final design. There's a lot of issues that still need to be discussed. We're not going to get into the shape of benches, color of sidewalks, types of trees. This is the big picture. It's pretty well refined. It's got a lot of the details in it in terms of traffic flow. There's been a lot of work done by our consultants, and they have really listened. They listened to the workshop, they took notes, and that all went back and forth, and I hope you enjoy what they're going to put forth for you. So with that, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the MSFI. I too promise to be brief, and which is hard for me, as you know, at times.
You have more than 15 minutes.
This is a follow-up, and as you can see in the title here, a design follow-up. So we really only had several minor items that we want to just share today as a follow-up to the full council's review that was referred back. So as the chair just mentioned here, this is preliminary design. So what you see before you here is your preliminary design plan that we're asking you for some sort of direction this evening. But just to kind of go through really quickly here, just two reminders that even came up at the last city council meeting, which was parking. You know, this is what we call the role plan, and you'll eventually call this your preliminary design plan. And this, you're exactly right. There's a lot of design details that need to be developed from here to a more final design package. But this is where we are today. So with respect to parking, as a reminder, the project area that you see here on the screen started with 239 spaces. There's 240 spaces today. So we're a net one by accomplishing where we are. The second piece was trees. Trees were very important. Even at yesterday's construction planning workshops, the comment of trees came up again. Where it sits right now within this project area, there's 157 existing trees. 76 of those trees will remain. So that's nearly half of the tree stock that you see today will remain for whatever reason, construction of utilities, other improvements, conditions of trees. 63 trees will be removed, but an additional set of trees, another 145 new trees will be brought in. So in the end, there'll be 221 trees in this project. And I think what we've heard from the public, we've certainly heard from MSFI, is the quality of those trees. Yeah, they're not going to be the size of the trees that you see today on day one, but we're going to look for trees that are 3 or 4 inches in caliber and specify those so that you could get a good start on the trees. So really with respect to that, unless there's any other questions, I'm going to get into there were 3 areas that we had a discussion at council that they requested to follow up with MSFI, and that was some detailing along Railroad Square. That was some of the detailing on traffic signal operations, and then the Central Square roadway circulations. So let me see if I can point here. The question that came up, and I'm just seeing if I'm pointing. Well, I'm pointing on my screen. You are. Yeah, you're good. Okay, that's great, perfect. So the question here was the transition along the bike path. This is Railroad Square. This is the intersection at Main Street. This is the large tabled intersection crosswalk. So the question was, if bikes are crossing and the bike path along the edge of pavement along Railroad Street, are they able to transition into the Railroad Street section at any point? So this little ramp right here was added. I think that's a detail, and we'll continue to detail that through final design. You also have, a bike would also have the opportunity, when it's crossing the larger crosswalk, this is a multi-use width, they can actually just traverse and go down Railroad Street right from there. So there's some good options for bikes. And just as a reminder, these 2 last spaces that are on the angle spaces here on Railroad Street, they're both handicapped, or they're both ADA accessible spaces. So those corners will be tipped down. So again, more opportunity for transition between pedestrians, bikes, in and along the Railroad Street and Railroad Square area. The second piece came up really related to the traffic signalization operations at council, and we had a follow-up with MSFI's conversations. So the 2 in particular, you can see the colors really represent a different signal phase. So if you're looking at green, substantially green is the north-south movement through the intersection from and to Main Street from Central Square. The blue phasing is essentially eastbound, West Street, and that would be either southbound on Main Street or straight through to Roxbury, and also a left up on Washington to Court. And then the orange is the left turn movement that's coming out of Central Square, that would be a left turn to Roxbury, or essentially that U-turn movement to return into Central Square. And that's how the signals are phased today. The right turn from Roxbury into Central Square, it's a different color here, and what we've proposed is traffic signals that would allow for either a guided movement or a yield movement. And I'll use Roxbury Street as an example right here. Currently, there's a full signal phased traffic signal light there. So it's a red, yellow, and green, and it operates generally in conflict with that existing U-turn, because both of those actually free at the same time, and that really should be avoided in the new signal. So what we're proposing here would be a flashing yellow beacon. It would be a red signal head and a yellow flashing signal head, and it would sit on flashing yellow, so that the vehicles that would be taking that right would just essentially yield to traffic. The reason why that's a full traffic signal, you'll recall that fire preemption, as well as the exclusive pedestrian phase, meaning when one crosswalk pedestrian pushes the button, it goes to all stop. So we do need an all-stop capability at that intersection to protect not only the crosswalk at Roxbury, but also the crosswalk into the Central Square Common. The same thing happens on the opposite side, but slightly different, because there is no conflicting movement if you're taking a right onto West Street. So that will have a green light. It'll be a full traffic signal, red, yellow, and green. It'll likely sit on green predominantly most of the time until there's a pedestrian phase or fire preemption. So that's the two operation things that I wanted to make clear. And if there's any questions, we can go back to that, but I think the operation will be pretty consistent. It's a new signal, it's a new computer system, and we'll have a lot of new functionality that we don't have there today. The next piece was at the top of the square, which is essentially the conversation that we had about the one lane or a two lane solution there. And what came out of the city council was a one lane situation, a one lane condition, that was wide enough to really support traffic. And I'm going to just zoom in here, if I can. It's not letting me, but I think you can kind of follow if I'm holding the dimension of the back of the parking to the top of the common, that's 22 feet. And as has been mentioned in the past, that's essentially the width of two lane or a single lane operation with a bypass capability. And that's what we're looking at. We did add this white hatching just to continue to narrow the lane to really to promote a more safer single file operation is what we're trying to do there. So that works out well, but again, you know, if the FedEx truck is here or the Pepsi Coke is delivering, or police or fire need to get by, there's plenty of room in that lane to be able to do that. So that is featured. And in those dimensions, it went from 25 to 22. We took that 3 feet of extra space and we applied that to the sidewalk panel as well as the flexible space. So you can see the flexible space where sidewalk commerce could occur is now at 10 feet, and that open wide path, the sidewalk path, is at 7. So those operate very, very well. The rest of the intersection really remain the same. There was a suggestion about some tick lines here that would promote that left turn lane a little bit better, coming out of Central Square South, that would be taking that left. So we've added that guidance in there. But I think substantially, what you see there is really where we ended up. I think the last conversation, and there'll be a lot more conversations as we get into final design, was the material use of the bike lane. So I think just from the conversation that we had at council and just as a follow-up with the design team as well as the TRC, you know, that will just be a consistent material of the sidewalk space. So if the sidewalk spaces are all concrete, that would be extended, and we'd need to find a way to differentiate the path of the bicycle lane, whether that's stamped, you know, some sort of painted color, or even colored concrete. We'll make sure that we identify that as we go through the final design process. But we understood that. We certainly respect that concern, and we'll find a solution that is equitable and fits into what Keene's direction is. Now, having said that, that wraps up 2 years of work before you. So if you have any questions, we're here.
So easy.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, if I may jump in now, I just want to kind of talk about sort of the next steps in the process moving forward. So of course, hoping that this committee is going to come to a consensus and vote to recommend this project to the city council tonight. The council will then take it up on the 18th. But moving forward from there, we'll be back as soon as you all are back in business in the fall with a negotiated contract with Stantec for the final design phase. And we'll be starting off, in early September on the next phase. So we're going to give these guys about a month off, and then we're going to get to work on that final design phase. The final design phase will take us through the fall and winter, but the goal right now and our focus is getting this ready for bid in spring of 2025. And I think that's achievable, and we're working towards that. Unfortunately, I also need to share some disappointing news with the committee. The U.S. DOT did announce their 2024 RISE grant awardees today, and unfortunately, the city was not selected for funding under that program. So that was, hoped for, but did not come to pass. No. There's basically a list of projects that applied, and from that, a list of projects that were selected for funding. So, where does that leave us? Basically, that leaves us with the funding profile that was presented in the FY25 CIP. As of right now, we have a $16.9 million budget. And this project, the funding profile that's in the CIP did not assume any federal or grant funding. It's all funded and paid for without that assumption. That said, we did receive already some different funding opportunities, right? So we got through the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund, we're eligible for about $2 million worth of principal forgiveness. So that is loan initially, and then after the loan is the project is completed and the loan proceeds are used, we qualify for principal forgiveness, and they reduce the amount of the debt that we have to pay back. We also received some principal forgiveness for the sewer and stormwater portions of the project. That's a smaller amount. I think it was about $137,000, if I recall. And finally, we received an ARPA grant, American Rescue Plan Act grant, that right now is being used to offset the cost of the stormwater design portion. Basically, it's offsetting the portion of the contract that Stantec is working under. So that all adds up, and it's a good chunk of money. It's just not the $13.7 million federal grant that we had hoped for. So with that, I would open it to your discussion and questions.
Just ruined an otherwise great evening, but yeah, go ahead.
So I'll just confirm what the Public Works Director said, is that we did not count on the grant funds, either the grant funds that we've received so far or the RAISE grant in the proposed capital plan, which was approved by the council. Obviously, it would have been nice to receive it, because we would have been able to then just allocate more money to other projects elsewhere in the budget and offset the capital plan cost. However, I do think that it's important that we use the money that we have been given, and we meet the timelines of those grants and those principal forgiveness. $2 million is not anything to, turn away. And we are also currently in the running for the stormwater sewer funding, which is up to $4 million, which is a congressionally directed ask. So we could potentially get about 3.6 of that $4 million from that funding source as well. So while it is disappointing, and believe me, when the Public Works Director told me this afternoon, I was like, no. But it was not part of the financial plan. And so we are ready to continue to move forward with this project and utilize the funds that we've been awarded so far.
This question is for Dawn. Was there a reason given why we didn't receive the funds, or is it just a blanket?
So not
thanks for
today.
applying?
Each year previously, they have offered the opportunity for applicants to request like a one-on-one debrief with USDOT staff. We will request that and get feedback on, why our application wasn't selected, but we don't have that feedback yet.
And since we didn't get this one, are we eligible to reapply, and would any part of the project qualify for that for next year?
So that's something, this is kind of breaking news, and we're still kind of digesting it. I do want to talk to the city manager about the sort of the strategy going forward. We had been working towards and assuming that this would be put out to bid as a single contract with 3 annual phases. We would have to change that approach if we were saying, we wanted to reapply for the 26 and 27 years of the project. So we would put out, construction project for 25 using city funds, and then apply for a smaller RISE grant application. That is something we could look at. I don't know honestly, and maybe Ed can chime in about how our competitiveness as a grant application looks as we shrink the size of the project and eliminate some of the things that were attractive about the project to begin with. So.
And I would just add to that, every year it gets more expensive. So by not locking in the contract in the first year, and we take a risk by then seeing if we can get additional grant funds in year 2 and 3, and actually inflating the cost if we are not successful.
Well, obviously, the infrastructure work still has to be done anyhow. I mean, it is kind of a Debbie Downer here to hear that, but the reality is the pipes and infrastructure down there are still 100 years old, and that's not going to change. So hopefully there's more grants down the road, but we can't just pack our bags and say no because we have a crumbling infrastructure. So, hopefully there's more grant money down the road, and, we move on, so.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I just wanted to speak briefly to the overall project and say that, I really do think we've arrived at a place, particularly after the workshop, which I thought was very productive, of compromise with all parties on this. Nobody's going to get everything that they want. Hopefully everybody gets something that they wanted. And I think one of the things that I want to emphasize about this project and the proposal is the increase in pedestrian safety. That's something that I hear a lot from my constituents. It's something that, to me, is maybe right behind the replacement of the 100 and in some cases, I think even 150, 200-year-old water and sewage lines. I think the biggest point of consensus is the increased pedestrian safety, the raised crosswalks, improved crosswalk signaling and kind of adjacent to the square on Washington and Court Streets. I think that's all great. I also want to say that I do think there continues to be some misunderstanding and misinformation about what we're actually doing with this project. Downtown businesses and their customers, I've heard loud and clear that the overall character and spirit of the square is working, right, for the downtown commerce district, and thinking about the downtown as, yes, green space and yes, pedestrian spaces, but really a commerce district. This works, and so we're actually expanding sidewalk space. We're actually expanding on one side the common, and so I do think that this is a proposal that makes necessary infrastructure improvements. I think it makes appropriate surface level tweaks for increased pedestrian safety, and I know there are members of the committee that disagree with me, but traffic flow. I do think this improves it. And we're still retaining that kind of central square character and charm. So I look forward to supporting this, and I do think there's broad support for this on council and in the community as a result of the work that this committee and others did long before I was elected to council. So my thanks to this committee and to Chair Greenwald and to the staff and consultants that have supported this and the public that have continued to weigh in. I think we've arrived at a really good spot.
Thank you. Anybody? Yep, go.
I would agree, and I think that, while it is disappointing, I remember, I lived on Elm Street when they had to dig up Court Street, and walking through those pipes, they're not pretty under there. And, I know that there's been a lot of discussion and negotiating around this project. I was at one of the first brainstorming sessions pre-pandemic, and it was really exciting. And looking at this now, I look at it and I see, this looks a lot like the central square and the main street that I know and love, except it has a lot more green. And I think that, I think that it's going to be, could be a tough couple of years, and having lived downtown through three of these areas now, I understand that, but, I'm really excited to see this come to life.
Thank you. Any members of the public like to say anything, or, yes, ma'am?
My name is that okay? My name is Sue Egan, and I live at 5 Central Square. I'm not sure this is the proper place for this, but I have to say something, only because it scared the heck out of my brother. Well, it scared the heck out of me when it happened. Last October, my brother was very kind to help me. And he visited me, and on our way back to his truck, an unexpected thing happened that probably everyone in this room who drives knows about, but I did not. I saw a fire truck come down Washington Street with its lights on, and it came through the wrong way. Now, there were lights on the poles in the square, but I was aghast, and my brother said, "Did you see him go down the wrong way?" And I said, "Yes, but this is the way that the fire department travels during a fire." And I'm not going to say that the fire truck cannot go that way. And I certainly would appreciate that maybe I should talk to the fire department or somebody, that I hope you understand what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
It was just very disturbing to see that happen, and I don't want to take up any more of your time.
Okay,
And I
thank you.
thank you very much for hearing me, and